Very good. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here today. I'm Kim Crider, and I'm a partner at velocityHUB. And I'm here today with my special guest, Brian Shield. Now, what we're going to do today is we are here for our digital transformation webinar. And we have the exceptional honor today of being live at Fenway Park.
Welcome to our, as I told the group earlier, welcome to my office. So it's a beautiful day now. It started off a little rough, but welcome to Fenway, and we're getting close to April 1st will be an opening day for us. So we're very excited everyone here, and very excited about the topic today. It's something that we're very passionate about.
Yep. So you're getting a great view right now, those of you that are online, of Fenway. We're sitting in this beautiful room overlooking the beautiful stadium. It's about 50 degrees here today in Boston, which is amazing because we had snow last night and we're having snow tomorrow. So we really lucked out on today. We have a live audience with us in the booth here today, and we've got quite a few folks that are dialed in online all the way around the world, I think. Just a quick shout out to our audience. You have a Q&A box, those of you that are online. Please go ahead and put your comments in the Q&A box. I think some of you may have put a few things in chat as well. We'll try to look in between the two. But what we're going to do is we'll have a couple of opportunities today for you to pose questions. I'll be taking some questions from our live audience here, and then I will turn to the online audience for some questions at about the halfway point today, and then again at the end. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And again, Perfect. Thank you so much, Brian, for hosting us at this beautiful venue here at Fenway. Now, today we're going to talk about data strategy. Sure. And why it's so important for leaders in organizations to have an effective data strategy in order to drive value for their organizations. And you have been doing this for a long time.
I have. Thanks, Kim, for saying that.
Yeah.
No, so I've been here at the Red Sox since 2013. So that's kind of really where kind of my journey sort of starts. Let me make sure I can sort of advance these.
Yeah. So he's going to bring your slides up in a minute.
And so let me tell you my story a little bit. So before I came to the Red Sox, I spent the prior 14 years working at the Weather Channel. I'm responsible for technology there. So really kind of so I've had this sort of love of there you go. I've had this love of data for quite a while, and a lot of what we do here now. I mean, I very much think that all companies are data-driven companies, ultimately, and certainly the Weather Channel is no exception. But back in the day when I got there in '98, we didn't think of that so much. Like now it seems kind of obvious, and obviously a lot of the weather data being kind of a part of Watson, it seems so intuitive. But back in the day, we didn't save any information that we put out. The adage was like, why would you say the forecast that we just provided, type of thing. So that obviously changed quite a bit over a 14, 15-year period. And so much of what we try to do here at the Red Sox, at least for myself, is the learnings that we kind of came away from. Like, so you can imagine like a company like the Weather Channel, now IBM and Watson, is a lot of it's around predictive analytics. A lot of it's kind of about sort of understanding sort of the behavior of data and being able to kind of capitalize on that. So 2013 is when I came to the Red Sox. 2013, if you're a Red Sox fan, was a very good year, type of thing. It unfortunately didn't start off so good, So 2013, what's interesting about that's when our winning streak came to an end. So we knew that this home sellout streak, home sellout streak was going to come to an end going into 13, and it really kind of ushered in a lot of changes that that we knew we were going to have to make. We didn't really have outbound sales capabilities. We had the luxury of having the benefit of having great fans who kind of came to Fenway over this 10-year period. And so, but we also kind of had this thing where past success does not necessarily sort of guarantee future success. And it's obviously over the last 10, 15 years, the whole world is ripe with many examples, whether it's like Best Buy moving to Amazon or the transition of Blockbuster to Netflix, or a lot of things we see nowadays going from traditional taxis to Uber and things like that. The world is constantly changing, and so I think we very much have that's very top of mind for us and for leaders here within the Red Sox. A slide you might be looking at right now is kind of about sort of like baseball's changing. Like it's not a guarantee. It's not, like we are very fortunate here that we've got some very loyal fans, a very loyal fan base, but that varies quite a bit too. I mean, it's sometimes, we're oftentimes competing against that HD television set and that comfy couch and and your favorite beverage, type of thing. And coming to Fenway, particularly months like April and May, can sometimes be a challenge. And so understanding our fans' behavior, understanding sort of what they enjoy most about coming to games in Fenway Park and the experiential aspects became really kind of a driver for us. And just to draw a comparison, sometimes I like to think about that these cultures are much more alike than people might think. These are cultures that were born out of two very successful organizations, companies that historically maybe where data wasn't top of mind oftentimes. They're also cultures that really put a lot of the spend very much kind of like out there on the field or in our on-camera personalities in the case of the Weather Channel and things like our studios and things, but really probably in some ways underestimated sort of what the level of it could require to kind of fuel this engine. So we've really been sort of rethinking a bit of our strategy around that, and that kind of brings us to kind of where we are today in this journey that we've been on. And so very much for us, it's very, even as fans of baseball fans, it's very common where we compare ourselves to other teams. The Red Sox compare ourselves to the Yankees or to the Dodgers or the San Francisco and that type of thing. And that's very common. But when it comes to technology, we very much understand our peer group, but as or even more importantly, we understand what's best in class. Kind of what's best in class in sports, what's best in class in industry, and we try to learn from those things as we sort of think through kind of like an appropriate strategy for ourselves. And really kind of it's balancing this sort of best in class with sort of our tradition and this wonderful environment we have here at Fenway Park, which is unlike for those that may not have been here before who are listening or seeing this webinar, you really have to experience Fenway. For those that are here today, probably know, and it's it's kind of what makes it great. And so for me, the challenge is how do we understand our fans better? How do we put technology into the hands of our fans? And really, how do we capitalize or leverage this wonderful venue that we have and make it magical for others?
Well, right, Brian, I was just going to interrupt you for a minute because this really is, talk about timeless transition here at Fenway. And I think Fenway's been around for well over 100 years.
Absolutely.
So how has Fenway been able to evolve?
Yeah, I was telling the group earlier, people have a tendency to think of Fenway Park as this sort of mausoleum to baseball, and it's all that, but it's much, much more than that. Fenway, was founded in 1912. A little history point here, but our opening day was just I think about 5 days before the Titanic sank. People don't tend to think of the Titanic as something that happened recently, so it gives you some sense for what it's like here. This 105-year-old ballpark, has wonderful memories, but for us the challenge is how do we sort of make it sort of experientially so that fans continue to love what they love about Fenway, yet add some of the amenities, add the technology, add the capabilities to sort of really kind of make it a modern experience for individuals. So as I said before, Fenway continues to change. It's in transition all the time. It's much more than baseball. We hold up to about 20 different events a year. Those range everywhere from for concerts, large-scale concerts, to football games, to hurling, to Frozen Fenway, various types of hockey events, everything, to last year, even having something like this, a big air competition, like who'd have thought, right? Those those things were higher than our life expansions here. So we very much see Fenway as an opportunity to really sort of engage with our fan base, 365 days a year. So that's really kind of part of our journey, and really how it continues to change. People also forget, I think, oftentimes that Fenway is more than just a destination for baseball. It's a destination for tours. So today, some 300,000 people come to Fenway Park for tours, and that's no small amount. That represents a very, very significant share of tours in baseball, and something that we're really starting to think more about in terms of how we continue to sort of make that sort of a great experience for all levels of fans, type of thing. So I said Fenway continues to change. About 2 years ago, we made the decision to put Wi-Fi here at Fenway. And coming from Georgia more recently, I grew up here in Boston. I should probably lead with that. But so I've always been a Red Sox fan. I kind of always thought I'd be with a team. I kind of thought I might be helping in the field, but that didn't work. So this is the second best option. But coming from Atlanta, I was working with my group, and I kind of shared with them that in order for us to really kind of engage with fans and understand our fans, and create products and technology that really kind of help to sort of channel some of that information, we also need Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is ubiquitous, as we all know. it's like air from any large-scale venues. And so we went on a major effort to add 600 plus wireless access points to Fenway Park.
Wow.
And of course we chose the winner of 2000, what was it now, 15, which who didn't know we're going to get 110 inches of snow. So we took what limited Wi-Fi we had originally. We were going to move it back down to JetBlue, Fort Myers, our spring training facility down there. And we basically outfitted this whole environment with modern day Wi-Fi.
Well,
so
I got to tell you, when we first all got here today, it was so easy. I mean, it's seamless is the access, and it's highly available.
Well, it gets harder when you add about 40,000 people,
right.
But I appreciate you saying that, and it is a journey for, as anyone may know, who deals with wireless infrastructure, especially in large-scale outdoor venues.
Right.
It's
so you got to have the Wi-Fi. Right. That makes sense. You got to have that available. Now, what about the data? So let's go back to the data that you need.
Yeah, it's a great question. So understanding. So first, it starts with understanding our fans. And I was pretty fortunate because the part of my arrival in, I think it was mid-2012, we had done this segmentation analysis to really kind of understand, the Red Sox fan, if you will. And really in many ways, we tend to think of Red Sox fans in sort of like two categories. It's like many fans that I know here who have been fans for a lifetime almost, who come to 5 to 7 games a year. They know Fenway like they're, the back of their hand type of thing, and they're very comfortable and, and sort of know their way around. And then there's the other sort of set of fans, families usually, with a limited some number of children. And we're going to Fenway Park is like going to Disney World, except more confusing. It's like I laugh sometimes. I get the questions I get asked from folks on the street where it's like, we get gate A next to gate D. These things I'm sure made tons of sense back in 1912, but they make it a little bit trickier nowadays. And so it's an evolving sort of environment for us. But it is at the end of the day, it's about thinking through our fan groups and figuring out how we basically can sort of understand the fan. And so we have a lot of fans. For those that are watching maybe from outside of New England, our fan base is very loyal. Up to 2/3 of people in New England consider themselves Red Sox fans. That's a big number. As someone who's lived in Georgia for quite a while, we have a lot of transient, folks moving down there. Like that's one of the areas that other groups struggle with, because people become sometimes fans of their favorite team, and secondly, they become sort of fans of the local team. We kind of enjoy sometimes the best of both worlds, where we get that large student population who become fans and oftentimes fans for life. So it's a great experience, but understanding who those fans are, understanding where they live was a big part of our challenge. The other part of baseball and in sports in general is sort of you get intermediaries between sort of source data and the data that we need to kind of fundamentally understand about the fan. You've got multiple forms of tickets coming into our environment. Some are direct sales, but many of them go through secondary markets. There's probably nowadays somewhere close to 15 different ways a ticket can get processed. That introduces a lot of error too, and so one of our challenges there is data quality. So one of the things that we continue to look for is ways that we can sort of partner with our key stakeholders and infrastructure component folks to really kind of service up this information. So being able to take information from turnstiles and mobile devices, secondary markets, understanding those things for loyalty programs or for concessions or merchandising or a whole host of different sources becomes complex. And a
lot of integration.
A lot of integration and a lot of disparate data.
Yes.
It makes this sort of our world. But at the end of the day, it's about creating this 360-degree view of the fan, so that we can basically create a better experience for our fans, and hopefully kind of tailor that, because everything here really kind of starts and ends with Fenway Park in our games, and so that's really that was our journey. That's essentially how we kind of basically found ourselves there.
Do you see other ballparks doing the same thing? Yeah,
so there's a very concerted effort. Perhaps one of my biggest surprises in terms of coming to the Red Sox is sort of the cooperation between the clubs. Now, including the Yankees. And so so what's fascinating sometimes is that like the other my peers in baseball are some of my best friends. And in fact, so we try to share a lot. We had this summit down in Texas back in November. And I think that one of the takeaways from that was that we see a lot of opportunities for sharing even more. We don't share obviously as it pertains to baseball and analytics and how we basically sort of evaluate players and personnel and things. But other than that, though, if you think about it, like whether it's some of our back office, front office systems, but some of our systems that support our front office, or sales kind of things, or venue management, other things, we're not competing for the same fan base. And so as a result of that, there's a great opportunity to kind of leverage best practices. And so we are looking at opportunities now where we can start sharing software with each other. So if I've developed something that can benefit the brewers, like why not, right? So we're trying to a little bit be sort of the sum of the parts is kind of greater than the whole, if you will. We have efforts to understand these fans, as we were saying, and these are shared efforts, where we kind of like talk with one another about sort of what works in different venues. We have different cultural differences. I mean, as I said before, Fenway Park is not a modern day stadium. It has different appeal to different folks, and we think much better. But understanding the fan experience is challenging, right? We've got all generations that come to a games, and so the way my daughter comes to a game, kind of thing, probably resembles some of these pictures you're looking at.
Right.
Which and that's, we don't view that as success. Not that we don't want people to have a good time here, but success is not every single person, looking at their iPad or their iPhone rather than watching the game. It's how do we complement the game of baseball? How do we supplement it? What do we do between innings? What do we do to kind of perhaps give people the information to kind of answer questions? How do I find food? What if my child has an allergy? Fenway Park, as I said earlier, is not the most intuitive, facility. So how do I find my way around Fenway Park? And so for us, mobility has become a big deal. And obviously, mobility had very little value until we had Wi-Fi. And so a lot of these things were very layered, pyramid-like kind of capabilities for us, to allow us to kind of get to a much better place. These mobile apps are really our efforts of working with Major League Baseball, who authors these, and on behalf of all the clubs. And so there's a great relationship between not just the clubs, but also with Major League Baseball's advanced media group and the commissioner's office to really kind of find ways to continue to make sure we're kind of meeting the needs of our respective fan bases, and putting features and things that kind of appeal to, maybe they're a Red Sox fan, maybe differently than some of the other fans you might find in baseball.
So what are some of those innovations that you're drawing in to enhance this fan experience and maybe drawing upon from your other clubs that you're working with?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously, a lot of it is around sort of what we just characterize as fan engagement, right? So it starts with understanding the fan. It starts with understanding what's best in class. And it's a lot more than sports, right? It's like, we borrow from, I think, we looked at different groups. We spend a lot of time looking at groups like San Francisco does a really nice job with social media. So we look at ways that maybe we can kind of leverage social media in our particular things. We look at ways that we can kind of engage with sort of, kids and things like that. Last year we introduced, virtual reality dugout type of thing. We've got more virtual reality things kind of coming out. We spent a fair amount of time looking at things like augmented reality and other technologies as well. So we're relatively progressive in terms of understanding sort of, I think, what technology adoption might mean for us and how it can effectively be leveraged here. We look at everything from digital ticketing to, what does Disney do in certain cases, or how do we entertain fans, or how do we put more of the decision making kind of into the hands of the fans, so that if they see something they like, if I go to a store and I see something I like and I want to have it, I may not want to carry around a jacket for the rest of the game, especially if it's like, 100 degrees out, so like, can I have it shipped to my house? Can I do different kinds of things? What is the role of RFID or other sort of technologies? I think we've kind of, in our case, probably moved away from RFID in certain cases, but we look at other things like, different technologies that people use in the stadiums for sports like soccer and other sort of things. One of the real benefits in my role too is because I'm a part of Fenway Sports Group, and for those that don't know, Fenway Sports Group also owns Liverpool Football, is that we have sort of a colleague, in the UK that we can talk and compare things with. So it's not just here in the States, it's not just a US oriented type of thing, it's really kind of a national thing. So whether it's the Olympics or it's, soccer or other sort of areas, I mentioned before Disney, we look for ways that we can basically cherry pick sort of the best of these different things, and share those. In our tour business, we look at sometimes opportunities around museums. Are there some things that we can look at there, whether it's augmented reality or maybe in the future virtual reality? If there are going to be fans around the world who may never get to Fenway Park, so like, how can we bring Fenway Park to the fans, and ultimately understanding sort of the data that really kind of drives these things. So we have a very ongoing process, in the ballpark. with new technology, looking at ways we can sort of provide information, whether it's line management or access to concessions, or baseball applications, that you see on your mobile device. So this is a journey, and it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of we're still sort of in many ways, kind of early stage, kind of in our processes.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's that for us, it's all about sort of getting our arms around that fan, right. Understanding fan behavior, understanding sort of how we can reach out to them. Larry Pino used to say that, our former CEO, he used to say that, like, going to a baseball game, it starts when you leave your driveway and it kind of ends when you get home. And so it's more than just creating this sort of rich experience here at Fenway. It's sort of understanding the fan and how they get here. It's understanding sort of the challenges of parking and concessions and maybe geofencing around this area, and understanding sort of how we can collect information to kind of create a more compelling experience.
That's great. Let me pause for just a minute here, because we're about halfway through.
Okay.
And this is great. This whole conversation all about the fans, and from your perspective, right, Vice President of IT. So you're providing all the technology to make this organization work, to make the ballpark work. We talked about Wi-Fi. And you talked about how a great part of your role is to figure out how do we leverage technology as technology leaders to really capture that data that we need so that we can really understand those fans, provide that information to those that need to offer this experience, and enhance the fan experience with other technologies, working with the intermediaries and everybody else. Fascinating. I want to give an opportunity for our audience to ask a couple of questions at this point.
Sounds good.
So we're going to turn to our live audience first and see if we've got a couple of questions from them. And then for those of you that are tuned in online, tee up your questions and we'll take a couple from you as well. So live audience, do you have a question? Yes.
No two-seam fastballs.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I came late, so it was already covered. And I know data is very important, and I'm just curious to know the size of the operation. I'm from EMC now, Dell.
Sure.
I know we provide a lot of storage.
Yep.
Here. Just as numbers wise, like how big is operation?
Okay. Okay. So I guess the question, for those who may not have heard it, was about sort of the size of our operation here. So, and the question came from Dell EMC. I'm still learning, but I'm making the transition. So. Yeah, so Dell EMC is a big partner of ours, so we've had a great relationship with them for a long time. We have our technology organization it's amazing. This is, by the way, pertains to sports in general. These things are very modest groups. Like, we probably today have, close to 15 full-time people in a group, but that number, we have a lot of interns, and we supplement with consultants and a host of other sort of part-time resources and things. But so at any given point in time, you could have, 20 to 30, individuals kind of running around. But still, for I think if there's some of the things I've shared, and Emily partially shared, what's going on here, there's a lot of great work that goes on, but there's a lot of, it's very demanding, and it's a great opportunity, and we're breaking a lot of new ground. So a lot of it's partnering, a lot of it's finding great, partnerships with, with key strategic partners that can kind of extend, what we do here, kind of like Dell EMC and like others, to kind of do some of the things that are challenging. Whether it's in the ballpark, whether it's supporting baseball operations, or whether it's supporting sort of some of the fundamentals around data and the fans. So that gives you a certain sense around kind of magnitude of our size.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
What's the, I guess, time allocation now between the fans and sales versus baseball operations and statistics of baseball players and selecting players and trade evaluation?
Sure. You mean in relative as it pertains to technology?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So one of the things you should mention, so baseball operations has, so we have some shared responsibilities across both baseball and I'll call it sort of the business aspects of baseball, running club type of thing. And then we have some dedicated resources in each group kind of thing. So within baseball operations, they have their own analytics group type of thing, sort of an R&D group now named. And we have technology folks there who write software and design systems and things like that are kind of shared between, or that are basically jointly, managed, if you will, between ourselves and baseball operations. Separately from that, we have sort of our business systems side of our house. And obviously, and when I think of Fenway and I think of sort of the Red Sox, I really kind of think of it as almost like four quadrants in a sense. We have sort of, baseball operations that requires obviously support. We've got our business systems, We've got Fenway Park and all the things that are fan-facing. And then we really have kind of the underpinnings of all that relative to our infrastructure. And that really kind of represents sort of the way I tend to think of our support systems. And that really kind of also, so I guess the question was asked about allocation of time. It's hard to do that a little bit because it varies quite a bit. Dedicated people are obviously 100% dedicated to a type of thing. Shared resources, we're kind of transitioning, we're adding more resources that are more dedicated. So I would say, in 2017, I think probably a little bit more like 60-40 on the business side, and 40% focused on the baseball side, relative to the group, our group, not the specific focus of the baseball side.
We're going to dive into the baseball operations analytics here in a minute. So great question. All right, let's take a couple of questions from our online audience. Mike, can you go ahead and read the question?
Yes, this is from Dr. Mark Atkins. He asks, why do you do what you do in digital collaboration? It can't be just fan retention. How is Fenway addressing cybersecurity within the park and across the organization?
Wow, those are good questions. So I'll start with sort of the fan component of it. So so it's understanding fan behavior so that for a number of reasons. One is, so part of it is sort of like elements around fan engagement, like how do we create a better experience for our fans? How do we understand like how many games they come to? I mean, you'd be surprised sometimes. Historically, our data was very limited, right? It might tell you that you're a season ticket holder. It didn't necessarily tell you that you're a season ticket holder that maybe has access to 20 games a year, but you only come to 6 of them. And that you give your tickets away to others, or that you come with your family versus you come with colleagues from work. So a lot of it is kind of understanding elements around demographics so that we have a better sense for like, who's at Fenway and, what kind of services are more appropriate to them and things. So there's most of it really around that portion of our capture is really kind of around is understanding sort of our fans and understand the kind of programs that we do. If we weren't doing some data capture things, we never would have done that example of Big Air. We didn't know whether that was going to be something that would resonate with our fans historically, but now that we capture more information, we have a better sense that would be something that would resonate with fans and things like that. The second question around security is a complex one. There are kind of two phases of security. So we partner incredibly closely with Major League Baseball on this. So this is very much a shared effort and one that is really kind of led by the league. So the commissioner's office does a great job with helping us secure Fenway Park. We do a lot of simulations here and other sort of things to make sure that our fans, our patrons are safe here at Fenway. Everything from looking at things like drones, you name it, type of things. There's a lot of work that goes in here behind the scenes to ensure that venues like Fenway are safe for the public. Separate from that, from more of like a cybersecurity perspective, we have a very significant program also in partnership with the Commissioner's Office about really introducing new tools and technology. So we're leveraging some of the very best-in-class security tools on the market, to create a better experience, a more secure experience for our own employees, for players, for everybody that interacts with Fenway Park, so that we basically kind of manage our assets, securely and efficiently, and and continue to sort of keep pace on sort of the never-ending, evolving sort of security challenge that we all have.
Is there another question there, Mike?
Yes, Bridget Griffin asked, data can tell much about a fan, such as age, gender, buys from Amazon, etc., but not often what motivates the fan to buy merchandise, attend games, cancel plans to attend games. So the question is, so those other things that drive behavior, what are you doing to take the data beyond the standard categories of data gathering about the fans?
Yeah, really good question, and I think on the money, there's sort of hard data, that we all kind of understand about, like who's attending games, what's the age, how many games, how are they buying their tickets, things like that. Really kind of, really kind of hard information. There's soft information, right? It's understanding sort of a little bit of that sort of fan behavior. So we're starting to tap more into social media around some of that. Some elements around sentiment and other sort of things that we can look at around, fan behavior, but a lot of it too. And by the way, I don't sort of profess that we are experts in all these things. We're definitely on a journey, and this is probably an area where we're behind many leading edge companies in this regard, but we're developing it. We have a partnership with a company here in town called Fan Manager, who does a great job of helping us sort of accelerate some of our learning in these areas. But looking at things from like, where do fans have affinities? Understanding affinities tells us a lot about sort of like potentially even areas like where we have sponsorship opportunities, right? I said before about it's understanding sort of like who comes to games. Like if you were a season ticket holder that regularly came to 20 games a year for the last 5 years, and now we were to see that you've dropped off to, 15 games or 10 games. There's a lot of work being done by a number of different sports franchises. Patriots do a really good job in this area of understanding sort of what is sort of those inflection points, and when do they warrant sort of reaching out to fans on, so that we can kind of get ahead of these things, so you're not reacting to the fact that a fan sort of doesn't want to renew their ticket, program, that type of thing. So we're a little bit early in this journey, but I think we've got a little bit of sort of a directional course.
Great. All right, let's hold any other questions that we have. We'll have another opportunity for questions at the end. But let's go back to baseball operations.
Okay, perfect.
Let's talk a little bit about the data and the data strategy that you support to really drive out and support the baseball operations and the ability to enhance the performance of the players and the teams.
Okay. Yeah. So I was telling the group here earlier that when we think about data here at the Red Sox, it really kind of falls into sort of two main categories. One of them is sort of everything, as I said before, about the fan and understanding that 360 view of the fan. At the same time, we also understand the player. I mean, there are the same sort of the satellite content categories that circulate around a player. Everything from understanding sort of their background, their biography a little bit, if you will, sort of their history of playing, injuries, contracts, agents, obviously their performance on the field, medical information, etc. These things really kind of, very much kind of like drive. I don't know if I can advance that just yet. Let me see. Stuck. Okay.
Can you move it, Mike? Will it let you advance it?
How do I advance it?
Well, Mike's doing that. I'm like, so I was saying before, so a lot of it's kind of, I'll tell you momentarily. Yeah, it is. Thank you. All right. So as I said before, like, baseball's changing, kind of like understanding our fans is changing. Baseball's changing, right? So, this guy here, people know him a little bit more. So Billy Beane, right? So people know Billy oftentimes as sort of someone who, around Moneyball, most people tend to think of as like Brad Pitt. But but really kind of, I think, one of the things that he kind of recognized is sort of a changing behavior and understanding sort of this data, right? And that data can be used to kind of make really kind of effective decisions. The Red Sox have been leaders in understanding, baseball and data analytics, for many, many years. And I think that's kind of, well documented in many cases. But data continues to change, and sort of the type of data and the role of data, and it affects, that quote that was up there a moment ago, Billy Beane would say things about, it affects on sort of like, how we staff our organizations, no differently than how clubs kind of, like the Red Sox, or, for those that like us here in New England, like the Patriots, it's like, it's not just finding the highest paid athlete, it's finding sort of the complementary resources, people that kind of fit within sort of a certain structure. So the role of baseball is changing. And, it's interesting when you think about building a team, it's really very much almost like a pyramid, right? It kind of starts with a farm system and really sort of the ability to be able to kind of bring in young talent and prospects and be able to kind of nurture and things like that. You're going to have sort of players that are kind of on the bubble, and those players might be kind of players that are, they're aging, or players that are kind of young and sort of need a little bit more guidance and things like that. We've got specialists, so we bring free agents and others to kind of complement and fill in the gaps kind of thing where appropriate. We've got sort of those everyday players and utility players. You get sort of hopefully a couple Hall of Famers, or at least some All-Stars, and things like that. And then ultimately you have sort of your coaching staff, that kind of helps to kind of, create this layered success of this whole operation, to kind of deliver, effect. And, what's fascinating about that, and I think sort of what we try to do is learn from it. So, I know when I came here, and just my group thinks of it as like, I was fortunate enough to come in 2013 when we won a World Series. And so, we sometimes look at it like, what does it take to kind of a World Series class IT organization, and we sort of look at our challenges much like the baseball team, if you will, like, it's sort of like building that farm system, right? So who do we either have our eye on, if you will, or what areas do we anticipate growth in? How do we sort of cultivate some of that with some of the younger talent? I mentioned we do a fair amount with interns and things like that, and doing those things. We have players, we have our own sort of flavor of players. We have, folks that are at different points in their career, and we basically try to hopefully give them the skills to be successful in doing that. we've got sort of everyday players that, we've got our own employees that are terrifically talented and really kind of make an exceptional difference really in our success. And that varies everywhere from people who have certain types of roles to really kind of like, I think some of our key domain experts in some of our technology areas and things, to ultimately our leadership teams. And then, how we basically manage them. And then, in some respects, my job oftentimes to kind of ensure that all this kind of layers into sort of a thoughtful mindset in terms of being able to kind of support this data architecture and sort of this infrastructure that we've kind of built here.
Oh, that's a great analogy. I love the way you tie your responsibilities as the Vice President of IT from a CIO perspective, looking at your team, and you said it, right? A world-class, top-notch championship team that has to be representative of the World Series organization, the World Series team that you are here to support.
Absolutely. This, what you're looking at, the path to getting to being sort of a major league player is a really arduous one. And if you think about sort of the challenges it takes to kind of get there from, little league all the way through different levels, let me go back here for a moment, it is challenging, right? And so it's not all that dissimilar from us. So what we try to learn from like our own player development is how do we kind of coach up our people to kind of be kind of the best that they can be, especially given the fact, as I think I shared earlier, that the sports organizations tend to operate in a very lean manner. And so when you operate in a lean manner, it puts a higher premium on ensuring that the people that are in those roles are really, key individuals, and that we're giving them sort of the right elements of coaching and player development and other sort of characteristics to really sort of ensure that they can be effective in their kind of careers.
Right, which is the same thing in IT, right?
Absolutely.
We're lean operation.
Absolutely.
So we've got to have the best. Well, let's talk about some of the specific technologies that you guys are using to really support those operations and what is happening today in the world of analytics and baseball.
Sure, and so baseball is very much a sport in transition in many ways, relative to data. I think it's fair to say that, for many of us that may have worked in other large-scale industries and things like that, when we think about data, and particularly what we characterize as big data, we have a tendency to look at things like, large-scale volumes, transaction data, like trying to make decisions in real time, like weather and other things, sort of things. Baseball historically, I know people thought we might have big data, but you think about it, you've got, 9 guys on a team, you play, 162 regular season games. You've got, limited. It's not significant, kind of in sort of its volume. That's changing. Baseball is very much a changing kind of environment, and whether it's the adaptation of new data sources, whether it's instant replay, more recent introduction is something we call Baseball StatCast, which through Major League Baseball's Advanced Media Group, where we now think of it as sort of overlaying this very refined grid across a field, where you basically now have position data on every single thing that happens. So what you find in baseball is that we're evolving to a world where you've got everything from position data to player data, information about hits, fielding, kind of you name it. So in a course of understanding all this information, it's a very sort of, it's putting a much greater demand on the kinds of resources, that can effectively make effective decisions from that. And really helping to sort of translate that into information that can be conveyed, effectively to coaches and, leaders in some of those different areas so that they can get the most out of the players. So it's very much sort of an evolving technology where today, we know everything regarding sort of players, right? So an awful lot about sort of things as easy as, in certain cases, like, if it's a pitcher, it's like, what is their release point? How many times does the ball rotate before it crosses the plate? Like, what's the XY axis of crossing that plate, type of thing? When a player makes contact with the ball, type of thing, how hard do you hit the ball? What's the trajectory off the bat? Where does the ball effectively kind of go? Type of thing. It's like understanding positioning. Where do you position your players in this sort of complex world? And we see shifts like David Ortiz's classic, where you see this dramatic shift to the right side of the infield, to kind of, because they realize over time that he's a very significant pull hitter. It doesn't always help them because he still does great, but nonetheless, it's learning from this data and effectively being able to kind of continue to sort of evolve and make effective business decisions. A lot of it too is understanding. Some of it's, by the way, entertainment level data.
Yeah.
Right. It's not all. You watched the Super Bowl recently and things like that. It's not all just understanding sort of this underlying detailed data that only analysts within baseball operations can appreciate, and maybe scouts, but it's also information for fans, right? Like, how fast did someone run to a ball? What was their path to the ball? Type of thing. How far did that ball travel? Understanding those things, I think, as we become a data-rich culture. I don't mean just baseball, but all of us. I think people like those kind of information. They want to know not just sort of like someone stole a base, but that their success of stealing a base, is exponentially better when their lead is more than 9.5 feet, kind of things. And so all that information is collected, and you're going to start seeing a lot of information finding its way, not just kind of being consumed internally, but also externally within ballparks and other sort of things. You're seeing it now in Major League Baseball broadcasts and things like that, where you see StatCast being leveraged to understand sort of new information about sort of these players. And I think that fans find this information, really, really exciting.
Yeah, so the data itself becomes a differentiator, not just for internal operations, as you said, but also as another way to establish your offering or your products and services to your customers.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Give them a whole other dimension of what it is that they're getting from you.
Sure. And that data, even though the underlying data may be the same, I mean, obviously we analyze it very differently. How it's analyzed within baseball operations to make decisions about players and sort of prospects and performance and other sort of things. What we find on the field. The challenge for us relative to fans is sort of telling the story. Like, how do we tell that story, and how do we make the information available to fans, whether it's at home, in the ballpark, through mobile devices, through televisions, other sort of things. To allow folks to kind of experience it differently here at Fenway than you might be doing at home. Yeah. And so it's a changing field, but it's not limited to just understanding sort of baseball and and understanding sort of player performance on the field. It's growing quite a bit.
And then of course medical analytics. We just did a webinar last month on the digital transformation of healthcare. Oh
yeah, so I think as everyone knows, medical is a rapidly changing area, and the Red Sox have been leaders in aspects of understanding sort of medical and how it touches, the baseball player, for years. And so if you think about it in many ways, it's continuing to grow as technology enables new information, whether it's things like wearables, technologies, but if you think about it in many respects, it's the ability to be able to understand sort of a player, for us, and for all teams, really, it comes down to, can you preserve the health of a player, like a David Ortiz for a moment, can you get a couple more years out of like an aging player who still has really, really good, strong skills? Can you help us discern, player A versus player B in terms of when we look at prospects, or if we're trading, what characteristics do we look at? It's more than just, if it was just based upon batting average and simple baseball statistics, it'd be a pretty easy conversation. It's much, much more complicated. And the role of medical is going to continue to change that. So we have a great partnership we use with a company called Kinduct that really is, in many respects, ultimately evolving to become sort of our medical data warehouse and whatnot. And so we see that as another aspect of understanding the player is how do we basically consume all this information. And we're fortunate in Boston because we live in a really technically sophisticated culture here, and it's not lost on folks. We have a great relationship with with a lot of different marketing organizations around sports, and many of them are coming here for the same reasons, which is that when they're here, they can find talented individuals who can complement sort of what they're doing and really kind of create sort of differentiated products and technology. Like this example with Reebok type of thing. But at the end of the day, for us, understanding medical analytics is, just use wearables as an example, but it's much more complicated than just throwing on a shirt or a sleeve or a weight on your bat or some other sort of thing. It's the ability to be able to, bring that information in, to be able to sort of store it, be able to sort of figure out how do I most effectively kind of analyze that data, maybe complement it with other sort of, other related information. So the blend potentially of what you can do with medical with what you can do with, player performance. Might sort of in some cases be the holy grail of what people think, ultimately baseball analytics kind of ultimately finds its way into being. But as clubs become more sophisticated, the ability to be able to take everything from, leverage obviously baseball analytics data relative to player performance and supplement it with medical information is sort of, I think, the challenge that we're all sort of, working our way through right now, and so that we can sort of help win more World Series.
That's it. I think we're ready for some more questions.
That would be terrific.
Why don't you hand me that? We've got a question here from the live audience.
Brian, thanks again, and I love your comment about building a farm team of interest involved. That was really cool. This is a multi-part question, but regarding baseball analytics, what does reporting look like with 162 games a season? Many times, a few games, 4 or 5 games a week. Do you have like a daily pregame intel briefing of some kind, and how wide is the distribution on that reporting?
Yeah, so the question for those who may not have heard is about sort of like, I guess, sort of like what's the day-to-day process like, and how does that effectively kind of work? So data is consumed every morning, so we take, or over the night, I should say too, and into the early hours of the morning. So we take in a lot of different data feeds. When I say that, I'm really kind of focusing a little bit on baseball performance data from the night before and things like that. What people may not know is we pull in data for all teams. It's not just ours, right? So all clubs pull in data for all the respective games that go on for every player that they want to basically, keep track of. So all the professional games we certainly do, the Major League Baseball games we do, certainly in the minor leagues as well. In certain cases, depends in different areas. We have 5 levels of minor league, operations type of thing. And so we collect all that information on a daily basis. It gets scrubbed, it gets distributed to our internal systems type of thing, and then our baseball analytics organization then goes to work and sort of looking at ways that they can sort of capitalize on that data. They use a lot of tools like, everything from like R to other sort of, visualization products and things like that. We've got relationships with some organizations that we're kind of kicking the tires on right now to see if they can supplement some of the things that we're doing in these areas. But it's very much a growth area for us, and sort of an area where, I think it's going to be sort of a shared solution on some level, trying to find sort of the ultimately sort of the differentiated content that kind of makes a difference.
Another question from the audience?
So you spoke about collaborative use between various silos within your data creation process. So how often do you find that the priorities may compete, and how do you necessarily resolve those? For example, Fenway historically has a park factor that's almost neutral. It's like 97-ish, depending on what metric you're using to calculate it. But so you're making structural changes to the park, and you're doing so with the idea of enhancing fan experience. But then perhaps your R&D guys come in and say this is going to change the park factor, and there may be a conflict necessarily there. How often does that happen, and how do you resolve those?
It's a great question. So baseball operations, Dave Dombrowski, sort of the president of baseball for the Red Sox, and his folks, his team, if you will, especially on the analytics side, they take all that into consideration. There's a lot of, so are we changing things, not just obviously here at Fenway Park, but ultimately with all of our minor league facilities, are we, or even as they're being manufactured, are we doing things that are going to change like the wing patterns? Are you doing things that, things that may be sort of fan friendly type of thing aren't always sort of player friendly. Right. We've got sort of the batter's eye type of thing in center field, where we obviously during certain, especially during day games, we kind of restrict people from sitting and things like that. But there's a lot that goes into it, right? Even like netting. I think folks know. The last year or so, clubs have added netting, between the different dugouts. That changes certain things for things. Now catchers can't catch certain balls, right? But some of those things are obviously for the well-being of the fans, and some of those have some implications to the play and that type of thing. So it's definitely sort of a shared experiential kind of discussion, and ultimately, a lot is deferred to baseball's decision, in terms of, what's in the best interest of sort of allowing our club to be successful.
Great question. Let's take a couple more. So here and then in the back.
When Dave Dombrowski came in, did he bring his own systems in, or was he able to leverage some of the some of the systems that were already in place before he came on board?
Sure. So I think Dave very much I think leveraged a lot of the systems that are here and had a lot of suggestions about how they could be improved. Everyone kind of with data in general, everyone has sort of their own things that kind of work for them, and I think in the case of baseball, over time people kind of develop their own sort of style of what type of information they want to see. So we started giving Dave a lot of new information that we historically weren't providing. In certain cases, he just obviously continues to leverage much of the technology that we presently have. And we're very much in the process right now of basically rewriting a lot of our baseball systems. And obviously we're doing a lot of that with his fingerprints on it and his key people. So it's never, you're never done. It's kind of a bit of a work in process type of thing, but it's very much oriented around sort of what he and his team think are going to ultimately allow us to kind of win the most games. So it's very much a changing sort of landscape.
Great. Okay, one in the back.
Yeah, and then my question is, I guess, more around like the real-time data component. What, if anything, is legal under the rules of baseball or is available to a manager real-time during a game as the weather changes, as lineup changes are made? You typically have the image of a manager with a pencil and a piece of paper.
Sure.
How much can they actually utilize different tools and technologies in the dugout real-time as the game evolves?
Yeah, it's a great question. So another kind of evolving sort of space in baseball. The questions around sort of, those may not heard as well, is just around what real-time information do decision makers, managers, and others, coaches, have available to them during the course of the game. And that's changing. I mean, like in the waning moments of 2015 to Major League Baseball, we kind of introduced tablets in the dugout. Those tablets were originally very much geared toward really kind of just putting a digital version of sort of our the current books we almost put out there for them. So a lot of these sort of advanced scouting books that we make available to baseball, managers and coaches, that allow them to kind of understand everything from, who they're facing to pitching lineups and, recommendations about what to do in certain situations, et cetera. That was really kind of put into more of a digitized format available to them on tablets. Baseball's starting to continue to kind of evolve that. So there's changes taking place now about supplementing that information on a more timely basis type of thing. But it's kind of an evolution. I mean, I'm not as close to kind of all the idiosyncrasies of what's changing. I mean, we also get data in a near real-time basis as well. We're constantly pulling information. You see it obviously in your screens and things like that. I think there's what baseball struggles with sometimes is, preserving some of the, sort of the characteristics that have always represented baseball and that culture and things that people really love about it, with providing access to coaches and staff so that they can continue to sort of make effective business decisions. And that's kind of a very much an evolving thing that you'll see. And Major League Baseball is very keenly aware of it, and I think you're starting to see it starting to loosen up a little bit, and see more changes obviously year over year.
Yeah, but with regards to the actual play of the game, are there still restrictions within the league?
There are restrictions.
Yeah, so people aren't going to have wireless
not yet.
Bluetooth connections
Not yet.
to their.
Not yet, but there's a lot of information that's available to players. I mean, what many people may not know when they watch a game is a lot of information is available to players. Once they go through the dugout. So leaving the dugout environment, it's not uncommon if you watch games where you might see a player, I don't know, say they struck out or something, and then they might find themselves, go within the tunnel type of thing. Well, they expose you. They might take a look at sort of their last batting, their at bat, figure out kind of what they missed, what the pitch might have been, why they, might have been above it or missed the swing and that type of thing. So a lot of it, some of the information's there. It's just not there as near real time as you might find, say, for example, like in football.
Interesting. Let's see if we have any questions from our online audience, Mike.
Okay, Greg asks, baseball has become a statistics strategy, players, recruiting, etc. Do the Red Sox have a proprietary analytics platform for coaches, or are there some league resources available?
Proprietary. So we do pull in, all the teams have the ability to pull in the same data. You can supplement it, any way you like, within, rules type of thing. But ultimately how it's consumed and how you, how you effectively leverage it, or how you, cultivate that data is kind of what differentiates different clubs. Some are more analytically oriented type of thing than others, and some have a lot more resources, and some, devote just a handful of people to things like this. And so it varies quite a bit, but ultimately every club has the fundamental, ability to kind of, go in whatever direction they think is going to benefit them most effectively.
One more, sure. There's a little correlation between a group's collective intelligence and the IQs or particular skills of its individual members. When you create the CIO team you laid out in the pyramid, but where do you look analytically on how you pick those team members?
That's a good question. So I think for us, it's I don't know if so it's an analytical process as much as it's sort of a experiential one, at least for me. I mean, I think very much a lot of it's around sort of how do we kind of cultivate complementary parts, if you will. Especially with sort of limited resources, it's, for me, it becomes all the more important. It's like we're moving, and also baseball's changing. We're moving a bit away from sort of a model that was very historically predominant here, which is that like it was almost a little like people wore a lot of hats. So you kind of became a little bit jack of all trades, master of none. That's changing. Like, that model no longer really works in complex environments like that we all live in, right? I mean, you could do that in some level if you only have a handful of people, but as we become more sophisticated, if people do not have sort of deep strengths and security, it's hard to just pick it up part-time, right? If you don't understand things about sort of, analytics is a good example, or data and architecture and whatnot, it's very difficult to be sort of a part-time developer, part-time, data expert type of thing. And so, we've kind of started to move. We have moved, really much more toward complementary but domain knowledge, much deeper domain knowledge in many areas, with a handful of people who probably wear multiple hats type of thing, and a lot more people that wear 1.5 hats kind of thing, but definitely have sort of a speciality in certain skills.
Great. I think we might have a few more questions, but we're going to hold those because we're running short on time. And if you've asked questions, or those of you that are in the room still have questions, we'll make sure that we get some answers to you. I know, Brian, you probably got maybe a minute when we're done here. But those of you that are online, we will definitely get some responses from Brian, and we'll make sure we get some good answers out to you if you still have questions. This has been amazing. So let me just try to recap just a couple of really key points, what I heard you say. If you want to be a world-class, world champion organization, you have got to be driven by data.
Definitely.
Right, and that data has to be aligned with a strategy that's going to help you engage your customers, your fans, whoever it is that you're trying to serve externally. You want to give them data to enrich their external experience. And from an IT perspective, you want to have all the technology available such that you can serve up that data and really drive that phenomenal experience for your customers. IT leaders are driving customer experience through the use of data. The more you know about those customers, and the more you can provide products and services that will meet their needs. Because we all live in a digital age. We all live and breathe by our technologies, and we want to engage the organizations that we're coming to with technology.
And every company is a data-driven company. I don't know if there is a company nowadays that doesn't, where data isn't a critical underpinning. No, I didn't say it explicitly, but like it's also understanding the business, right? It starts really there very much, right? So it's like people are not just domain experts in their respective technology space, but it kind of starts for us very much in understanding our customers, our fans, our internal customers too, and because they're all very different. Supporting baseball is not the same thing as supporting sales, that type of thing. And so it starts there, and ultimately data is the common, experience across all those different areas that allows us to be successful.
That's a great point too. And I think that's really important for some of our audience here today. These are all IT leaders. And IT leaders really need to really understand the organization and the business of the organization that you're trying to serve.
You're a business leader. Yeah, you're a business leader first, and you're an IT leader second.
Absolutely.
And if you're not, then unless you have a very, very narrow domain skill, you're going to have challenges.
Right. So then again, it's not just about the customers; it's also about the operations. How do you make that operation work as effectively as it can, so that it can continue to win on the ball field, and it can continue to deliver a phenomenal experience. Mike, why don't you pull my slides up real quick, because we're going to start to wrap this thing up. I want to just say real quick that we've got our next webinar in the series is coming up on March 15th. We are going to be hosting Dr. Joe Carella from the University of Arizona for that particular one. He's going to talk to us a little bit more about talent development in a digital age, leadership in a digital age. The University of Arizona has been really kind of leading in this whole area of digital transformation from the perspective of building leaders and building teams. So all of what you said about building that pyramid, we're going to drive out with Dr. Carella next time. Again, I want to thank Signature Consultants, phenomenal partner, the leader in IT staffing across the country. And they have been a phenomenal partner in helping us set this up here today. My last point for all of you out there, leadership is a daily decision, right?
Absolutely.
Right? We have every day got to think about how we're going to lead our organizations and how we're going to leverage data effectively to do that. So if you need help, if you're looking for ways to really guide your organization through this digital transformation process, let us know. That's what we're here to do. And with that, Brian, again, thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to Fenway. We appreciate it, and feel free to send me information if I can help you guys in your journey, and I'll keep you advised as how we continue to sort of evolve our challenges here.
That's right. And what are we, less than 60 days away from opening day?
We are April 1st. We're excited,
All right. Yeah, well, if it's anything like today, it's going to be a phenomenal opening day. We're going to do a quick another pan of Fenway Park here for everybody. And again, just want to say thank you so much for being a part of our webinar series. It's a beautiful day in Boston. It's a beautiful day at Fenway Park. Have a great day, everyone.
Goodbye.